So Adam Redding Kaufman, our wonderful social media chair, is going to introduce Katie Porter right now. And Nia, can you pin both Adam and Katie to the screen, please? Welcome, Katie. We're so excited you're here. Adam's going to introduce you. Go ahead, Adam.
Hello, everyone. And Katie, so stoked to have you here. I was thinking about how I was going to introduce you this weekend, actually at my parents' house in their guest room, where on a desk is all of my mom's favorite photos of all of our guests and people closest to our family. And the picture that she chose for me out of all the pictures in my life is you and I at the Laguna Beach Democratic Club barbecue this summer. And I just think that speaks so much to the influence that you are and the impact that you have on other people. Just the fact that my mom chose that photo of us and to present that to our guests, like my son got to meet Katie Porter, I think speaks to how impactful you are and how influential you are. And it's cross-generational and cross-country as well. You are such an inspiring figure. And it's my honor to introduce you to Laguna Beach Democrats and all of our guests here at this meeting tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Adam. And I'm really glad. I often wonder what happens to all the pictures that people take of me, especially the ones they take of me in places like the grocery store and even the pool. Twice I've had someone take a picture of me in the swimming pool. So I always wonder what happens to all these photos, and maybe they are in guest rooms all across Orange County. And so really thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. It's nice to be with you again. It was great to be with you in person this summer, and it's great to catch up here a few months later. A lot has changed since I saw you last, including that we have basically survived redistricting. And it was definitely a difficult experience. And you know, Mike Levin and I sat on the House floor, was sharing a set of AirPods, watching as the maps drew this line and that line, and cheering and booing. And we did that day after day in between taking House votes. I want to start though by acknowledging how grateful I am for all that Harley Ruda has done. Year after year, from his first campaign, when we were both brand new candidates together, learning from each other, watching each other, building a friendship, everything that he has done, up through his continued engagement, even as he has suspended his campaign with doing things like joining the board of the former California League of Conservation Voters, they're now called Enviro Voters, and the work that he is set to do with his leadership pack to do things like help support Katrina Foley in her race. So I just want to acknowledge how grateful I am for everything that he has done and for his ongoing partnership and friendship, and really, really appreciate all of that, and wishing him well and a lot of happiness in the upcoming months. So the exciting thing for me is that I get to do two things that I both love to do. One of them is continue to represent the community where I live, where I'm raising my three children, where they go to school and where I work, and that is the community of Irvine. The second thing I love to do is meet new people. I am definitely one of those people about whom they say she's never met a stranger. I love to meet new people. I love to engage them, to hear about them, to see new things. And I have the chance to do that in communities from Seal Beach to Laguna Beach, including the community of Costa Mesa, and to get to know those communities. And obviously I shop and I visit, I see doctors, I do other things in these towns. But it's going to be different to have the chance to really work to earn their vote and to earn their trust. And so I'm excited about getting to do that and looking forward to it. So it's a fun opportunity. It's a little bit daunting. We'll have about 66, about 2/3 of the voters this will be the first time they'll be seeing my name on the ballot. So we have a lot of work to do to introduce ourselves to voters, to answer their questions, to build that track record of trust that I worked very hard to try to establish with the communities in Orange County that I currently represent. So we're taking this race very, very seriously, and thinking about having to go back to some of those basics from 2018, thinking about How do you start conversations with voters who don't know who you are, who haven't been following you, who haven't had door knocks or haven't had mail reach them? We're going to need to begin that process. And that's both difficult, time intensive, volunteering intensive, and expensive to begin that. But it's also a real opportunity to continue to expand our Democratic reach in Orange County and hopefully be able to not only get reelected and have the honor of continuing to serve, but also help elect down ballot Democrats in all of these communities. Some of them have a lot of Democrats in office, including Laguna Beach. Some of them, we have some work to be done. And so I'm going to be really involved in working to continue to elect those local, county, and state officials as well. And so I see we have Judy Mancuso, our new candidate. I saw you put right on your Zoom name. You have your name and then you have your candidate.
Thank you,
so
Katie.
Excited to see you. Excited to see you launching your campaign and looking forward to partnering with people like Judy as we go forward. This is a difficult moment in time in our country's history to begin talking to voters and trying to earn their trust. Because literally as we're having these meetings tonight, we are watching our Senate grapple with whether to take bold action to protect our democracy or whether to say, well, we'll just see what happens. The way we've always done it is good enough, even as the way we've always done it actually isn't how we've always done it and hasn't really been working all that well, including for many of our most vulnerable and marginalized Americans. So this is a difficult moment as we're seeing the Senate really grapple with and perhaps fail to step up and meet the challenges that our democracy faces by protecting democracy. It's a difficult moment to earn the trust of voters. And so that's going to be a really big challenge for us, even here in Orange County, where we've long had wonderful Neil Kelly at the helm and sadly no longer, but we've had many, many years of Neil Kelly encouraging and protecting the right to vote here locally. That is not necessarily the case around the country. And I think it's causing a lot of voters to be skeptical about whether their vote will matter, to not trust the democratic process, and I mean little d democratic process, and much less then also to trust big D Democrats. Why are they not standing up and fighting for this? We are in the House. We've passed these bills over and over again. The president has talked about them. We've heard many wonderful speeches today from senators, including Senator Warnock, whose speech was one of the most moving, I think, and powerful testaments to voting rights that I've ever heard. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to look at it on social media and watch it. We also need to regroup on the ground with passing legislation that affects Americans' lives and improves Americans' lives. The infrastructure bill is good. There are a lot of good things in there. Beyond roads and bridges, which are important, there's money to fight wildfires in there, to build coastal resilience for our communities, to prepare for cyber attacks. There's a lot of great things in the infrastructure bill, but many of them are longer term projects. And in the immediate term, families need help making ends meet. They need help addressing rising costs. And the Build Back Better Act had a lot of wonderful provisions in it that would have done exactly that, making it easier for seniors to find and afford and get in-home care as they age, bringing down the cost of childcare so that people can stay in the workforce or join the workforce after raising their family, making sure we're bringing down the price of prescription drugs, saving taxpayer dollars by making sure that we're charging oil and gas companies a fair royalty rate. That's my bill. It was within Build Back Better. Fighting climate change. These are all important priorities. And I have to be clear to you, the problems that American families face don't change with the whims of what happens in Washington. The cost of prescription drugs was a problem last month before Joe Manchin said what he said. The cost of prescription drugs is a problem today. That doesn't change. And that means that we can't change in continuing to push forward on those priorities. I do think the Build Back Better Act is going to get a different name. I don't know what it's going to be. I think it's going to get a little bit of a rebrand, but I don't hear from my colleagues, including my moderate colleagues, any wavering on the fundamental issues that we think our economy and our society need to be tackling in this moment. There's a lot of consensus in the Democratic caucus about those issues. And so I think we're seeing moderates and progressives the entire House of Representatives be in a more unified place in this moment than we've been throughout the first several months of President Biden's presidency. And that's where we're going to need to stay as we gear up for 2022. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions. Really excited to be here with you all. Looking forward to launching our campaign formally here in the upcoming couple of weeks, and to hopefully having as many of you who can be involved in as many different ways as you can. So thank you so much. And like I said, happy to take as many questions as we have time for.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. So I'll just get right to it. The first question is, if the Voting Rights Act fails to pass, could the president make Election Day a national holiday? And then can you talk about why that would be important? Because it gives people the opportunity to vote and makes it easier.
Yeah, terrific idea. We are exploring right now lots of different options for different kinds of executive action. And I think that's a perfect example. We know the president can do this. He made Juneteenth a national holiday this year. And so he's certainly capable of making Election Day a holiday. Now, to be clear, we don't want it to be a holiday only to see states force people to stand in line for 12, 13, and 14 hours and then turn them away from actually casting a ballot or discard the ballot that they actually cast. But we have to make all of the moves toward protecting our democracy that we can. And making an Election Day a federal holiday is certainly one of them. It's something President Biden could do on his own. Not only do I think it would help many workers be able to get to the polls, but it also sends a strong message to Americans about the importance of voting and sends a strong message that we are going ahead and moving forward on as many different kinds of things as we can. The other thing I want to encourage everyone to pay attention to and to watch is around the country, there are more and more organized efforts than we have ever seen before to invest in and participate in Secretary of State races and races for county and local election officials. These have often been sleepy races with few dollars, few volunteers. People haven't understood the stakes, and they do now. And we're seeing a more and more of an organized effort from the Democratic Party to make sure we're electing people who at the local and state thing will administer whatever the state's election laws are in the fairest way possible. And that is really important. And we've seen here on the ground how the innovations that Neil Kelly has brought to Orange County, long before California had some of them. Neil Kelly was piloting programs, instituting things, engaging in our community in ways that expanded voter participation. So we need to make sure we're electing those people and then continuing to look at executive actions. And I think the national election holiday is a really important step the president can take, and he can take it right away.
Thank you. So can you talk about the importance of stimulus checks and particularly the child tax credit? I know that there was talks of that being removed from the Build Back Better proposal. So can you maybe talk about, do you think it's a good idea? I think I know the answer. And then can you talk about how the odds of it being in a final proposal for Build Back Better, whatever version?
Yeah, one of the most frustrating things and about being a politician, about being in Washington, and there are some things to choose from, let me just say. But one of the most frustrating things is sometimes the very big gap between what are our most effective policies at making change and what policies have the biggest and most widespread popular support. And I don't think anything illustrates that better than the child tax credit. Across the spectrum, including from moderate Republicans, there's lots of support for the child tax credit. Progressives support it, moderates support it, there's been some Republican support for it. It brings down child poverty and invests in our next generation of workers. And it is very efficient. For every dollar that we put toward it, we get almost a full dollar of benefit back. We don't have any misallocation, we don't have fraud, it's one of the best programs we've ever come up with. It also pulls the worst of any of the major policies that were included in the Build Back Better Act. It pulls the worst with Democrats, it pulls the worst with independents, it pulls the worst with Republicans. So things like combating climate change pull significantly better with Republicans. Bringing down the price of prescription drugs, investing in childcare. The child tax credit doesn't pull well. So there's something we have to do differently here as we're thinking about explaining to American families what this is and what it does. And so I think that is where I want to see the White House really think about how we're talking about this. And I will tell you that, sometimes the Democratic caucus, we've been given tons of materials, how to, talk about the child tax credit, talk about the child tax credit. And I finally pushed back to my colleague, Ted Lieu, who's one of the people in charge of this messaging. And I said, Ted, why would I, in a super tough race, talk about endlessly the least popular policy? We have to better understand why it's so unpopular, whether it needs a new name, whether we need to think about how we're messaging on it. We need to build that popular support. So to be clear, I don't think that's why it's not passing. I don't think that's why Build Back Better is not passing. There's a lot of other reasons. Well, one really big other reason for that. But I do think it's something we shouldn't look away from. And so I've said this to my colleagues, and I had a really good conversation with Ted, who I think is one of the best leaders we've got, certainly in California, but maybe in the nation. I said, Ted, we can't wish this away. Voters don't support this. We have to look that squarely in the eye and figure out why and how we can go about changing it. And I think as someone who's a frontliner with a tough race, a tough race in 18, and a tough race in 20, gonna have a very tough race in 2022, I have to always think about that. And I think sometimes some of my colleagues in safe seats, some of our Democratic leaders, they're so committed to the value, how good the policy is, that they want to wish the politics away. And I think that's a mistake. So it's an interesting, I think, example of sort of what we need to do better going forward.
Thank you. And then what about the Supreme Court? I know that they're considering, everything that comes out of the Supreme Court, nothing is good these days. So can you talk about what are there proposals you support for changing?
Can you hear it?
For changing the Supreme Court?
So
can you talk about?
So the main proposal on the table right now is to expand the size of the Supreme Court. And probably, I think, expand the size of the federal judiciary at the appellate level as well. And again, going back to that point about good policy and good politics that I was just making, when you talk about changing anything that people perceive to be kind of part of the architecture of our democracy, people get very nervous. This is why we've done so much work to educate people that the filibuster is not some sacred thing that Benjamin Franklin or James Madison came up with. The filibuster is just a rule, just like any other rule that was put in place and has been changed many, many times over our history. We also have to educate the public that the court has changed. The size and the structure and the functioning of our federal judiciary has changed, even as we've always worked to protect its independence and its integrity. The reality is the workload of the court is way, way too high. And what that means is that many really important disputes, interpretations of laws and rights go unenforced every single year. It's a problem for our most vulnerable people who are looking for the Constitution to protect their rights, but it's also a problem for businesses who are looking, for example, for interpretations of regulations. So I think that it's about preserving our democracy. It's about expanding the number of judges. It's about getting some more people in there who share our values, but it's also about making the federal judiciary work better and be able to do more work. And I think that is a message about government efficiency, about making sure that all branches of our government are working as intended. That's the way to talk about this, that doesn't necessarily close down the minds of people who have different views about what the judges should and should not be ruling on. There's this broader argument about making government work well that I think we ought to be making. And that's not to say that I don't completely see and share the many, many frustrations about how the last several nominations have gone and confirmations. I do. But I think there's an argument we can make even to moderates, to independents, and to Republicans that might, and even to some of our, more cautious Democrats, support for the court actually is more about temperament than it is about ideology. People are nervous about change. And so I think that's really important. The last thing I want to say about judges is, if you're feeling down about government, and some days even I am, take a look at any one of the amazing individuals that President Biden has nominated and have confirmed in the judiciary. You will be blown away. I like to think that I have a pretty good resume. These people leave me in the dust. They are remarkable, they are amazing, they are inspiring, and they are young. And they are going to be on the bench for many, many, many years. And they are going to be our future Supreme Court. So there's no doubt that President Biden learned from the missteps of President Obama with regard to judicial nominations and appointments, and is doing an amazing job without a lot of cooperation from the Senate, mind you, of getting these people both nominated and confirmed. And so I think when I think about the future of the judiciary, the long-term future, what kind of court will my children be raising their children under? I think it looks very, very bright, even as today's court, I admit, is very, very concerning for our fundamental rights in the short term. And we have to keep also reminding the American people that as the court can contract certain rights and say they are not constitutional, for example, the right to choose an abortion, the Congress can step up through passing things like the Women's Patient Protection Act and protect that right. So we are not powerless in many, many regards with regard to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court may say that's not a constitutional right. It doesn't mean that we can't win in House and Senate races and be able to protect those rights through legislation. And that is a very, very important message that we need to get out to voters as we try to drive engagement in 2022.
And this is a good final question. What are the top 3 ways to volunteer for Katie's campaign now that we're District 47?
Yes, so thank you for asking this. So we are going to be organizing a series of get to know you house parties, hopefully outside in backyards here as Omicron comes back down, but happy to do them virtually. God bless me with a very big sort of Zoom personality, so I'm happy to do them virtually as well. But I need to get to know the best volunteers, the best neighborhoods, the best people, and so I want to hear from people about what's on their mind, what are some of the local issues. And I'm planning to go on a listening tour kind of from Seal Beach down through Laguna Beach. Maybe I'll do it from bottom up and start there with some sunrise in Laguna Beach. I haven't thought that through yet, but we're going to do a whole day, taking some video, stopping into some small businesses, meeting with some nonprofits, and getting to know each of those communities. So come to one of those house parties, host them if you can, invite other people to come. Get ready to make some phone calls. And knock on some doors, because we need to reintroduce and introduce to me in the first time. The reality is most voters don't watch Lawrence O'Donnell. I'll be on tomorrow night with my whiteboard. I hope a lot of people watch, but the reality is a lot of people are just getting through their day. They're tired. They don't identify as a Democrat. We cannot win this race if we only win the Democrats. We have to win the independents. We have to persuade some Republicans. So that means we're going to have to get out and introduce ourselves to this new voters. And then the last thing is, if you can chip in. Whatever you can give really, really matters. It is expensive to run the kind of campaign where you're meeting new voters for the first time. It takes a lot of repeated communication to build up that reputation. So last time I had the benefit of really building off all the work I'd done in 2018. And I just needed to kind of remind people. So we ran mail that looked kind of like what the last mail looked like. We ran a TV ad that, my campaign was like, can you cut your hair so you look kind of like you used to? Here in 2022, we're going to be meeting people for the first time, many, many communities and many people for the first time. And that requires resources. So those are 3 easy ways that you can help. But you all are all doing a lot of wonderful work already, and continue to bring new people into your work. That is really, really important to continue to grow and mobilize and build on the engagement that we've built in Orange County over the last 4 to 6 years. We have a lot. We want to keep that going into 2022 and 2024. So thank you all so much for having me with you. And I look forward to seeing you in Laguna Beach and in communities around Orange County here in the upcoming weeks and months. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Porter. This was delightful to have you here. You are inspiring to all of us and to so many, as we've said. And so we want to also say that we're hoping to do some door knocking for you as well. So hopefully there'll be some campaign materials, because we do have a lot of people who like to do that, get out into the community. And also we are hoping to have a March women's event, and maybe in person, an outdoor event at the end of March to really honor women and our women leaders, and all of the women running for office in our district, in our new districts, are all women, which is fantastic. So it's a great opportunity to highlight. So we'll keep you posted on that. We hope you can come. That would be wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Katie. And yes, Allie Anderson's on the call, campaign manager. If you haven't done so yet, I'm not sure if I saw it, but please drop in the chat again where people can sign up to volunteer for Katie's campaign and where they can sign up to donate to Katie's campaign. All right.